All right, everybody. We are going to see how this goes. Unbeknownst to everybody who will be watching this, assuming it gets recorded and actually survives. We had a bit of a technical session for about 50 minutes before we started recording here because...
it was a whole 50 minutes. That was good.
Modern technology, let me tell you about it. It's... well, we'll get to that. So I am joined by my frequent collaborator, usually on movie stuff, but I had this... I had this thought because I've been listening to Dr. Doug Bielmeyer's The Process podcast, which I love. I think it's great. In particular because it is a celebration of creativity, which is what this whole show is going to be about. So I had this thought.
Absolutely.
Why don't I just bring Doug on? Because the last time I talked to you, Doug, I think we talked about creativity in parts, but I think half the episode was catching up and kind of reminiscing, and then the other half was focusing on the album, which was fine.
Right.
But we didn't really get into... we did. We talked about creativity, but not as a main subject.
No.
So I thought, why don't we do that? Why don't we go ahead and talk about creativity for the entire however long this thing lasts before either my computer explodes or the cloud goes down or whatever happens.
Or a T2 scenario. Yeah,
T2
where I'm
scenario,
burning
Skynet.
a fence.
Hey.
Yeah.
You know what? There are days where I'm like, Skynet might be right. Maybe it can do things better.
It's like happening, right? It's like currently happening. Yeah. Yeah.
It seems
Miles Dyson is somewhere in a lab. Yeah. In Silicon Valley.
Skeletal hand. This would make a good robot arm. Yeah. Okay. There's nothing terrifying about this at all. I can't imagine this choking someone to death or holding a laser rifle. No. Why would that ever happen? So I'm welcoming back, as you've heard, Dr. Doug Bielmeyer, who is the teaching professor at Northeastern University.
Yep.
Right?
University.
Okay. I didn't know if I figured it was university. Most schools are, but sometimes there's weird names.
University and snack shop as well.
And snack shop.
They're getting into the snack business. So
well, as most people know,
actually, there's campuses. I think there's even campuses out west too now. They have one in where is it? Where Mills College used to be, I guess, and Seattle, Toronto. So so they're not just in the Northeast anymore. So yeah.
So now they have a snack shop with Starbucks as opposed to Dunkin' Donuts. Good, great.
Oh no, it's always Dunks. It's always Dunks. Unfortunately, the brown water. Yeah, the brown water, man.
I'll tell you something. As a tangent, because why not?
Why not?
Because there's really no Dunkin' Donuts anywhere near where we live.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other day I had said to my wife, I said, I don't remember what Dunkin' Donuts tastes like. I'm pretty sure it's not good, but I kind of want to go because there's one like 20 minutes away. I just kind of want to go and get some and remind myself that I don't miss it. But it's one of those weird things where I'm like, is it as bad as I remember? I know the donuts are, but is the coffee?
Did you try it? Did you try some, or did you go, or no?
No, we haven't gone yet. I just thought about that the other day, and I didn't even know if there was one nearby.
Are you more like a Starbucks guy, or are you a local coffee guy, Starbucks guy?
Kind of all of it. I like the Starbucks I know a lot of people hate Starbucks. That's fine. You don't have to like it. I'm not saying it's great coffee, but honestly, the reason I go to the one that's here is because the people are really nice, and they know me, and they're friendly, and so I like to support the workers more than caring about the coffee. But I also do my own. I get coffee from all over the place, and I do like a French press on it. And I grind it myself and all that stuff when I want to be, about it. Kind of everything. But honestly, coffee for me is a vehicle for caffeine. I kind of think a lot of it tastes the same.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, it's funny. So the Dunks coffee, in my opinion, it has a very distinct flavor, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I do like the cold. They have like cold coffee, which is pretty good. But there's a coffee, and this is going to make me sound really Canadian, but Tim Hortons were really big in Buffalo, where I grew up. And I remember drinking like tons of Tim Hortons when I was young. And a few years back, I was like, just like you said, I was like, hey, I remember that coffee being really good. There's a Tim Hortons. I think we were like in Canada or something. I was like, let me try it. And I literally did a spit take. Like, I drank the coffee. It was just like, what the hell is this? So not so good. So I didn't like it. But I think it's that darker coffee. I think like the Northeast, like the New York, New England kind of is, darker coffee. And I think some of that other stuff.
I tend to like the dark roast myself. That's the one it's weird to think about it now because when I was younger, coffee wasn't like it is now.
Right.
I mean, my dad and I would just go to literally a gas station and get coffee and buttered rolls, which is something that's completely alien to a lot of people in California. Right? Did you eat buttered rolls? Literally just a Kaiser roll with butter on it?
Yeah.
Like wrapped
we had
in plastic wrap.
There was like salt on it and stuff.
Yeah, that's it. That's all it was. And I tell people that out here, and they're like, "A what?" And you mean a bagel? I'm like, no, a bagel is something else. I'm like, no, a buttered roll. It's a Kaiser roll.
There's the James Brown "Living in America" song where he's talking about black coffee and a hard roll, and and you like, and you just like, you're like, what is he talking about? And that's exactly what it is.
That's
he's
exactly
just drinking
what he's talking about.
Bread and coffee. That's on tour as he's touring America. So if it's
I
good enough for James Brown,
that's what I'm saying. There's an Italian grocery nearby, which is great because that's also kind of rare in California. At least a lot of it. You don't get good delis and groceries that are aren't generic. I'll say it like that.
Right.
But yeah, they make really good fresh rolls. And once in a while, I'll just make a buttered roll, and it's like this is the most this is peasant food.
You feel like trash. You feel like you're like just putting the
literally.
But
just
you know what? It's comfort food. It's
butter. It's nothing. Yeah. It's the worst possible nutritional anything you can. It is prison food.
It's just fat and starch.
And bread.
Yeah.
Terrible. I love it. Every once in a while, I'm like, yep, that's home for me. That's my youth, is eating this thing and driving to crush cars at my dad's like a wrecking yard. So coffee, Yankees, and a buttered roll. It's like, that's my youth right there. It was great. Mm-hmm. I miss it. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Where the hell did that even come from?
I don't know. We were talking about coffee. We were talking about buttered rolls, and God, that's how these things become 3 hours, 4 hours long.
I know. Yeah, and my wife said, "All right, I'll see you at 9 o'clock." I'm like, "Yeah, probably." So anyway, we talked about a lot of things, but we really didn't delve into creativity. So I listen. Well, maybe this is how we. Well, no, it isn't, but this is related. Mm-hmm. So normally, when I have my coffee on the weekend and I'm doing my drawing, yours is usually one of the shows that I have on, because one of the things specifically about experimental music is, and this is not specific to that because there's other art. Anytime art veers out of what I would call the expected bounds of whatever the form is,
right?
If people don't have context, they have a hard time with it. It can be alienating.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't necessarily say that I am a experimental music fan, but I enjoy it far more when I hear somebody explaining what it is, or what was behind it. Although you did have that one Tanner. What was that?
Oh yeah, name? Tanner Porter.
Holy shit, man! That woman has an amazing voice.
Oh yeah, and
I was like, this is like a Tori Amos 2.0. Her voice was stunning.
That's funny. So I heard it, and the PR rep contacted me and was like, "Hey, like I have this artist," and I was like, "Absolutely, I need them on the show." And sure enough, it was saying, the sounds like or whatever, because when they're trying to pitch an artist, they're like, "It sounds like this." Tori Amos was one of the people, and I was just like, "Oh, of course, no wonder why I love this." But that was a great album. And like, just to be honest, like full disclosure, sometimes I have composers or artists on, and I'm like, I don't really get it, or like the music I'm not like 100% vibing with, and I almost need it like explained to me, because I'm just kind of like, what are they trying to do? And other times it's, other times I'm just like, oh, this is great, I totally know what they're doing. So I think that's part of the show for me, because I was going to be like, I'm only going to have music on that I like, or that I immediately connect to. And instead I was like, no, I should just kind of have an eclectic grouping of music that's all under this canopy of experimental. And when I have those people on that I'm like, what are they doing? 9 times out of 10 after the conversation, I'm like, okay, I see what they're doing, I see where they're going. And a lot of times I'll go back and re-listen, and I'll be like, oh, like that's pretty straightforward actually, or that makes a lot of sense. So sometimes just talking to the creator and just talking to somebody tells you a lot more about the music. And we could argue, I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, but we could argue that if you have to explain it, then maybe you should rework it. But, like, because you're not there to explain it when it's, being performed, or when you're hearing it on Spotify or something like that. But I don't know. I think that's what the show's about. Like you said, it's a little bit out of the mainstream. It's out of the normal thing people consume. So I guess maybe it does need a little explanation. That
is an interesting, not debate point, but that's an interesting thing to contemplate, is if it needs to be explained, is there a problem with it? And I don't know. I would go. I could see that from either angle.
Isn't that every David Lynch film though? Like, you get it. Like, there's things in a David Lynch film, like, you get it. The guy's driving a car and he walks into a room and he talks to somebody, but then there's going to be like a gremlin in the corner and you're like, I don't understand what that is, you know? There's a classic scene in Mulholland Drive where there's like the thing in the dumpster, and I'm like, I still don't know what that scene is about. Like, you know what I mean? So like there's even in David Lynch where the rest of it's pretty straightforward. I mean, that movie definitely does, you know, challenge our perceptions and expectations. But even in that, there's stuff that needs explaining. And David Lynch is the type of guy where he might not even ever explain to us what he was doing at that point when asked. So
no, I mean, I've heard interviews with him where he said, I'm not going to explain it. That's not the point. The point is you have to bring something out of it. And I think maybe that's the differentiator is there are people who create work and they think you should understand what they were saying. And that work, if you have to explain it, then I would say it failed. Because if you're saying that there is a message here and you should be able to get it, then I should get it without you telling me. But if the idea is to create a landscape, visual, audio, whatever, that somebody manifests something of their own into, and that's what you want it to be, then I don't think you need to explain it. Now, some people will use that as a BS cover for making bad art. That's always going to happen. But I do think
like
there
you
are
don't
people...
you don't understand my genius or whatever.
Well,
it's
if you don't get
I
it,
don't know,
then
man. You
were
like banging on a piano. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's always going to be those people. But I do think there also are artists who sincerely don't want you to have what they experience. They want to lay something out and see if you get something different. And I think that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. Ambiguity is okay.
Well, what's my biggest argument? My biggest complaint about, you know, music these days or songs these days or films these days, creative projects, is when it gets too preachy is maybe not the right word, but it's feeding me everything. It's all tell, it's no show. And, you know, I really love, you know, I was watching House of the Dragon, the second season, and I love in that show how it is all show, very little tell. So it's not somebody sitting there saying, I'm upset with you right now, or like, that makes me mad, I'm going to react irrationally. Instead, in that show, it's like, what is that person thinking? Their eyes say they're doing this, their actions are saying this. And so not only is that just like, in my opinion, good writing, but it's also, in my opinion, good art, where it's not like telling you things. It's not running this narrative. It's not just people like monologuing. It's showing. And like a David Lynch film, you can figure out what the gremlin in the dumpster means, and it's maybe not for him to explain it, but it's for you to interpret.
Yeah, and like I said, I really, with Lynch, I think that is what he wants. He wants the audience to feel something, and he's not going to tell you whether he thinks it's right or wrong is his own prerogative, but you should bring something to it. And in that case, because I do think he's sincere, because all of his work is that. And when he talks about it, he's not using buzzwords or using catchphrases or just making it up. You know, he can explain in long and winding detail why that's important, why the audience has to bring something to it, and that his thoughts to it are setting it up, but they are not the whole thing. Whereas some people, there is a tendency to over-explain, is to say, well, this is what this means now. This is the message.
Right.
And there's very specific times where you can do that, but they're very specific. Most of the time what it does is it comes off as, preachy, or really what it's doing is you're talking down to the audience. If you're saying, you can't get it until I tell you what it is, whether somebody knows that overtly or not, that's what you're communicating is, you're a dummy, I'm smarter than you, and here's why I have to explain why I'm smarter than you, because you won't get it, because you're stupid. And most people don't like that. So, that is an interesting point of consideration, is if you have to explain. It's like explaining a joke. Well, if you have to explain a joke, then it's not funny. Unless the joke is in the explanation, which there are things like that. So,
But like you said, mood though. But like you said, sometimes they're establishing mood, and so like it's hard to explain mood too, and being like, why did I feel uncomfortable in that scene? Why did this make me uncomfortable? And I even think of like Lynch's like Blue Velvet. In the start of that show, or a movie, it shows this like picturesque like suburban town, and the movie's pretty straightforward, and you're like, okay. And then there's this weird scene with the sprinkler, and there's like this bug in the sprinkler, and it's way too close and it's way too long, and you're just like, what the hell was that about? You're just like, and now you're on edge, because now you're just like, wait, like what's lurking, which is kind of that movie, movie's vibe, what's lurking under this suburban thing. So that doesn't have to be explained, but I bet if you were watching that, you'd just be like, what the hell did I just watch for a minute and a half? Why did I just watch this bug under a sprinkler kind of up close? Like what was that about? So I think experimental music can be like that. I think it can be sometimes you're like, why do you need to do this? And sometimes it's not so much like you're making a concrete thing, or you're saying I'm singing, it's a sad love song. Instead, you're saying like, I'm trying to evoke this mood of, of sadness or, something. And that can get really abstract and not definable.
And is that where you come from with it? Is it okay? So a piece, assuming somebody didn't hire you and say, I want you to make this, which that tends to give you a starting point, but for your own stuff that you're generating internally, where does that come from? Does it come from as a reaction, or are there times where you're just sitting there, I don't know, with a sage candle burning and magical beads that you're waving back and forth and going, aha, it has come, the muse has returned? Or how does that work for you?
Right. Yeah. You wait long and hard. And there's all these tropes about like, it's the tortured artist, right? And we like have no ideas and we're uninspired. And then, magically one day in a dream, God speaks to us or something, something happens. We have like some, magical thing, and we write the notes down. Like I hear that so many times, everywhere from like Michael Jackson to like Beethoven, like where they would have a dream and the melody came to him in a dream and they would go and write it down. I think even Seinfeld talks about jokes would come to him. He would wake up in the middle of the night and like write jokes down and then go back to sleep. So there's that whole trope. For me, I say this all the time. We're responsible for our own inspiration, and we have to be our own muses. And a lot of times people will come to me, and by people, I mean students, because I deal with them a lot, and they'll be like, I have writer's block. I don't want to write anything. Life sucks. Like everything's been written. Have you ever said this to yourself before? Like everything's been painted. Why do I need to paint another, why do I need to do another illustration of Escape from New York? Like everyone, Snake Plissken has been drawn 1,000 times. Why do I need to redo it? And so I think, for me, like going to shows, going to musical events, and either participating in musical events or just consuming them. And sometimes it's like theater, sometimes it's other stuff. I have to go to that stuff, and sometimes I don't want to go, which is messed up for a musician to say, like, I don't want to go to your show. But I'm like, I know I have to, because I'm going to sit there and I'm going to be like, what is this shit now? What are they doing? They're like doing this thing with a wire or whatever. Okay, and then all of a sudden something will happen. And I'll just be like, oh, that's cool. That's cool as shit. And I'm like, but what if? And then, you know what I mean? Then I'm like, then I'm inspired. So I think if you sit on the internet all day, and I think if you're just like going through the motions of all the things you have to do in the day, I can get really uninspired really quickly. So for me, it comes from a moment, the creative spark comes from a moment of being inspired, and that's usually at a musical event or going to see a movie. I'm a big fan of going to the theater still, because like to see the movie in the theater, which is harder and harder these days, but going to see it, because then it's like 100% focused. You got to sit there, watch it. You've got the best sound, you've got the best picture. And I don't know, when I go to the movies now, I end up just like, I almost like weeping, and it could be like an action movie, and I'm just be like, this is so beautiful. Like, this is so amazing. The sound is great. Visually, it's so great. And so I find that really inspiring. And then what happens is, what do? I like run right home, and I'm like, let me go and create something based off this inspiration. That's
interesting. Yeah. The tortured artist thing I always find funny, because I don't find that that's usually true. I think some people, I'm sure it is, The dream thing makes way more sense because I've had thoughts of stuff and I wake up and I quickly like note something in my phone and then half the time I don't know what I meant because I mistyped half of it. But there is the dream thing and that makes sense. That's your brain working. Dreams are your brain working things out. So it is internally generated and in some ways people who could do like that lucid dreaming, I kind of envy that because I figure, that's interesting. What would a lucid dream look like for me? But I've never been able to make it work. I've tried it a couple times.
I was going to say, have you ever had that where you like woke up with an idea for a painting or an illustration or something like that?
Oh yeah, no, I've had the roots of ideas or like rough drafts of ideas that I've woken up with, and I try to note them on the phone because sometimes when I wake up, it's only for a second, then I'm so groggy I go right back out, but. Yeah. If I can keep the presence of mind, I will try to. I've had one for a while. I had a dream. Speaking of David Lynch, if you remember Return of the Jedi, Luke comes to Jabba's palace. It's such a fucking random story, and he meets with Bib Fortuna, and Bib Fortuna's like, get lost, and Luke is like, no, I'm coming in, and like,
this is the door scene. This is like when he walks up to the door. Okay.
And the thing is, we never really ever see. And I don't know if they've ever explored it in any of the other media. We don't really know what the mind trick does to somebody, but you have to assume it would have some kind of short-term effect. So I had this thought of, if you remember in Twin...
They usually just basically like repeat whatever the person with the Force said. So like you don't have to check like with Obi-Wan, it was like, you don't have to check our, see our identification. And they're like, we don't have to see their identification. They usually just like...
But then we don't see if the stormtrooper has like a headache for a week or what, because that would have to do something because you're being influenced supernaturally, right? I mean,
or if he like leaves his family and goes somewhere else in the galaxy.
He's just sitting there at the dinner table going, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. And he's just like pouring cereal into his lap. And it's like, Don, what's going on?
Don, you seem so distant, Don.
What's going on? Did you take a blaster to the helmet again? What's happening? So I had this thought, I had this dream where Bib Fortuna, like if you remember in Twin Peaks, there's that part where the giant appears and everybody else disappears and he says to Cooper, it's happening again. And I thought, okay, the scene it's the same bar and it's Luke Skywalker with his hand like this and it's a table with Bib Fortuna and it says it's happening again because he's influencing him. I'm like, that's a really I wrote it down. I've never illustrated it, but it's in my phone. Yeah. Bib Fortuna, it's happening again, Twin Peaks bar. It's there because I dreamed it. I was like, that's really strange, but I probably had watched Star Wars. Return of the Jedi I watched pretty often because the space battle, I think, is unparalleled. So I watched that pretty often. So it was probably in there, percolating around. Yeah, I woke up and I'm like, all right, write that down. At some point I'll get to it. Or I'll never get to it, but it's a neat idea.
That actually gives me a whole different, totally different perspective on that scene too. Was it actually, so like both scenes where like, is it momentary? So you're saying is the Force like memory trick, is that momentary, or then can Luke always go back to that person and reach out across the galaxy and just like influence them, be like, choose the spaghetti instead of the, like he's at dinner or something like that. And they, he's like, order the club sandwich, or something.
Yeah. And this stuff doesn't matter in a movie like that. That's not what it's about. But you have to sit there and go, especially in the case of Bib Fortuna, right? Jabba is a terrifying gangster on that planet. He is the major crime boss, right?
Yeah.
And you just basically created the biggest security threat by walking right past him. So to make someone do that, you have to override their base instinct, which is to be loyal and to be afraid. So that has to have an effect. That's what I mean about, I would think that he would have nightmares of Luke Skywalker waving his hand or, talking to him for the rest of his life because, Jabba was like, you moron, like immediately. And I almost thought Jabba would have to have killed him 5 minutes later. He doesn't,
probably,
but, you would think that's what a mobster would do. Yeah. So, there's, again, it's Star Wars. I don't think George Lucas was worried about the psychological ramifications of the Jedi mind trick. That's fine.
Right.
But it stuck somewhere up here and then kind of came out in a dream. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's sort of a neat idea. So the dream thing happens, but that's rare. It's usually not that. I don't know where it
I was going to say, I don't think usually when I'm asleep, and I have woken up with solutions to problems where if I'm working on a particular piece and I'm like, oh, how do I end this, or how do I get from point A to point B? Sometimes I'll wake up with the answer, But yeah, I'm not waking up in the middle of the night. And like, if I did wake up in the middle of the night and write something on a piece of paper or the phone, it would probably be the most like random. Like, it would just be like Salisbury steak, and then I'd like wake up in the morning and be like, "What the hell was I talking about?
Eat? What do I want to eat?"
Like, yeah, it's like Step Brothers. I would be like, give me back my Salisbury steak, Leonard Nimoy, whatever. I'd be like, what the hell am I dreaming about?
Yeah.
Got to stop drinking so much caffeine.
And I'm the same. Most of the time, I don't really dream that I can remember. So it's a rare occasion.
Yeah.
There's probably been 5-6 times that's ever happened in my whole life where I woke up and went, "Oh, this is," and then had an actual idea. I have typed stuff in, and the next day been like. Fuck does hot dog bagel mean? This is stupid. I was clearly just sleepy. Yeah, put it away.
I think you're onto something. A hot dog bagel.
Hot dog
that
bagel.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah. So
it's from your hard roll roots. Hard roll roots.
Hard roll with a hot dog. That sounds disgusting. So you get to the point, see a movie, something like go to a performance, whatever it is. Then what is the next step? Like how do you? Because I look at how I do things is so simplistic because I just draw outlines of people, and then that's usually how I start things. Whereas music is so multi-layered compared to what I think of as what I do. How do you how do you start from whatever that vague idea is? And and this might not be possible for you to do, but when that inspiration point happens, do you hear something? Do you hear melodies or tones or notes? Or is it more of well, I know it's going to be about this long and I want these to be the feelings you have. Like, how do you coalesce that? Because like I said, music is so multi-layered where you have to keep building it up that it seems like it would almost be impossible to start because you either have too many options or none at all.
Yeah. I think, something I talked many episodes on the process ago with composer Michael Drews Drews. And I've written music with him and we've like performed live together, and he does a lot of electronic music. He's very cool, but he would always talk about like the kernel of the idea. And so there's this like kernel. So you're even talking about drawing like basic figures. Like often in music, there's like this like kernel, this like thing, this idea. And it could be like a melody. It could be a whole really like complex kind of, arrangement. It could even just be an idea, like what if something was really loud and they got really quiet? What would that be like? That could be the inspiration. So I think it usually does start out as a very basic kind of kernel of an idea. As far as what catches my ear and what inspires me, this might sound a little wishy-washy, but it's definitely a feeling. Because I listen to so much music, and I listen to students' music. I listen to just, all the new music that's coming out. I listen to music from people who are going to be on the podcast. And so I hear a lot of music and my ears are like, music is happening. But every once in a while, there'll be a piece or there'll be something, and I'll just be like, I'll have this like physical reaction to it. I think like Tanner Porter's music, I was like that. I was like, oh man, like this is a thing. This is affecting me physically. So when I hear that in music, or when I'm working on something myself, maybe I'm just like, messing around on the keyboard or something like that, and I hear that, like I start to get a physical feeling. I'm like, okay, whatever this is, that's the kernel, that's the idea. Let me go from there. And sometimes that's other people's art. Sometimes it's highway robbery. I hear it in somebody else's song and I'm like, wow, that's a really cool moment. What if I did this with it? Or how can I take that kernel of an idea and do something on my own?
Okay, so here's a question. How do you judge? Because you're saying, okay, there's elements that you hear somebody else's stuff and you want to incorporate it. How do you get that invisible? Because I know for me, there's certain points where I'm like, okay, I'll look at something and I'm like, wow, all right, but I can't do it the same way, or it's just me doing their stuff. And I have to try to figure out what that invisible line is. Is that the same thing for you where you're like, okay, I hear this progression and I want to do something similar, but I can't just do that progression? You hear this a lot in music, especially if you just float around Bandcamp. You're like, wow, that song sounds like the next 5 that I just heard. They're using the same. There's something in a lot of synth music called like an arpeggio or something. Like it's okay. And
same chord progression, same the Axis of Evil, or not Axis of Evil, the what is it, the Axis of Awesome. They're that group and they play all the, what is it, like 5
Oh yeah, the
five,
main
four,
things
seven.
that you hear. Yes.
Yeah. And so they play that same chord progression and how it's like all these different songs, and so there is that where you're like taking that. As far as like taking other people's ideas, I feel like I'm twofold about it. I'm confident that I can do it better, but I'm also I'm so limited that even if I tried to steal somebody else's idea, there's no way I'm going to be able to replicate what they did because I can't translate it that well. So it's kind of this weird, like, I'm like overconfident and then also like self-deprecating because I'm just like, okay, like that's a great idea. I could do it better. But when I translate it, I'm going to mutilate this thing. I'm not going to be able to, take it. I hear stories about like people were able to like dismantle entire refrigerators and then like put them back together or whatever. Like these people who are like really technical. I think they call them engineers, but
I think
they can do this.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm like that, but I'm like a bad engineer. So I'll take somebody's idea that's a fridge and be like, I can make a better fridge. And I take it apart and then I'm like, oh shit, where does this go? And where does this go? Well, let me put it here. Let me put it there. So whatever, I feel like it's a great thing to take other people's ideas because I think what happens is in that translation process, it's never going to be the same thing that they did. And sometimes it's even perspective because I might be taking something from a different community or a different style of music that I'm not like a community member of. So if I'm taking it and interpreting it, then I'm going to focus on different things. I might be like really interested in the kick or like the beat of it, where in the original music genre, it's all about the vocals, or it's all about the lyrics or the words. So I think that's great. I think it's great to kind of try to do something else somebody does better. And I don't mean like a cover song, you know what I mean? Or like a reboot, considering we're in reboot culture. It's more of like, oh, this idea of something being really loud and then really soft. Like, let me try doing that. And it's like, oh, well, mine sucks. But hey, it's kind of cool in this other way, So I don't get hung up on that. I don't get hung up on, am I stealing? Is it going to be just a bad facsimile? I think it'll be inherently my own thing.
So let's detour into the hottest topic of anywhere on the planet at the moment, sure. Because this is the big thing that people get upset about when it comes to AI tools, right? Or generative AI specifically.
Yeah.
So what do you think of, because obviously there's generative tools for everything now. It's writing, mm-hmm. it's visuals, it's music. And I've seen a number of different tools. Maybe you've used some of them. I don't remember all the names.
Yeah.
Where people are just creating things in there. And there's obviously, like everything else, there's the extreme polarized view where some people say AI should be able to consume every single thing there is and do whatever it wants. And then the other side, it's like, stop it all and just destroy it. I tend to be pretty neutral on it. I don't think, mostly because I don't believe it can actually create. So I don't think it actually makes anything. I think that's the reason I'm not scared of it. I'm not worried about it because it's not actually creating. It is repurposing. And sometimes that repurposing is interesting and sometimes it's garbage. And the thing is, you can't really tell why most of the time it's doing what it's doing. So I'm not afraid of it, but I also I don't consider anything it's making as creation, but that's just how I look at it. I'm curious what your thoughts on that are.
You've had so many daily fives about AI over the last, I would say even 6 months. And every time I see one of those, I'm like, sometimes it's a video game that I don't want to play, so I won't listen to it. But any of the ones that are about like, new Adobe software or any of this AI stuff, I always want to listen to it because I love your take and I agree with you on your take, which is in general, this is a tool. One time you said it really elegantly, like it's like anything else, it's a tool and it can be used. It can be used for good or bad. And I believe it is that. I think the sticky part is when we're getting into some of these things where like an actor, a voice actor is being replaced because they can just have the AI read the script. Or people are being replaced because they can have AI do that task for them. I think, you know, with like, I use large language models like all the time for writing. So I use like ChatGPT, and I use that all the time because that helps, you know, take some writing ideas. Like I have to do so much writing that no one reads. Do you know what I mean by that?
Oh,
like,
sure.
Like there's just so much like resumes, letters of reference and things like that. And like, honestly, people skim those things. They don't always get read, but you have to have them. And so I'll use AI quite a bit in the large language models to do that type of stuff. But yeah, it's not creating it. I have all the it's basically, you know, it's Python scripts. So they're just running these Python scripts based on information that I'm giving it. So I write a prompt and say, from this perspective, write this, and then here's the information that I want you to base it off of. And it does a great job because it knows how to put stuff in the right format and, you know, sign my name at the end of a letter of a reference, you know, that type of thing, or letter of recommendation. So it knows all that. But yeah, I don't see it, like you said, I don't see it creating. But yeah, you know, you could say I should be paying somebody to do all that writing, or I should be educating myself to do all that writing. But I think there's a lot of stuff that is in society that like, we like, do we really need to be doing that in 2024? Like some of this writing people never read. I do though. I love the quote that's on the internet. I see it all the time on somebody's Twitter feed. It's just like, what reality are we in that that we're using computers to like make our art and our music, and you know, all the boring, we still have to do all the boring stuff. Like I still have to, you know, like fill out paperwork, but we're using AI to do the things that make life amazing, right? Like creating art and music. So, I don't know. You know, and I don't mean to sound like a jerk, but I always just feel like creative people like you and I feel like people are like, jealous is the wrong word, but I just feel like people are like, oh, well, like, they think they're so special because they can write music or draw these like really intricate illustrations, but like, you know, a computer could just do that. And I just like, I feel like it's like that. I feel like it's like, just leave us alone, man. Like we want to make and create. Like, that being said, I use so much software that analyzes audio signals and does interpretation based on the analysis. So I have for years have been using quote unquote AI or software that's analyzing and making decisions based on that analysis. So Autotune, for example. So is that really AI? Not really. It's analysis and you know, output based on that analysis.
Well, to some degree, that's part of where it gets sticky to some degree to talk about this stuff, because part of the problem is what people are classifying as AI and what they're calling creation. Because Adobe has had something called content-aware fill in Photoshop forever. And what it does is, if you've never used Photoshop, because it is friggin' expensive, is if you have a part of an image that got disrupted, let's say you took a photo and there's like a bee's flying, it's blurred, and you don't want it. You can actually just tell it, okay, replace that. And what it does, and this is the really interesting dividing line between what they've got now and what they used to have. Before, it was taking information from the photo and guessing how to fix it. So it wasn't generating anything. It was, or at least it wasn't externally generating anything. It was not relying on an outside source. It would just take what was in the image and try to guess how to recontextualize it to cover that up. That's not generative AI. That's just image recreation. It's generating, but in a silo. Now they have Firefly, which is this thing where you can say, I want you to create an image of a tiger with a top hat that is jumping in a pool. And it will go out and it will sample all this different artwork, which Adobe has said they're largely trying to get consent for. And I believe they're trying. I don't think they're lying. It's just impossible, really, to get consent for everything. They can't do it. And so it makes this image. And the thing about it is, and I don't know what your experience with music generation stuff is, but the image stuff sucks. It's not good. It never gets anywhere near what's in my head. So it's not even that I don't use it because I have a stance against it. It's because I did one where I was just trying to get it to make an image of Lando and me. And I couldn't get it anywhere near us. I ended up just using the joke images for this joke AI show I did. But I couldn't get it anywhere near what, and I was being very descriptive, and that thing kept giving me the same basic people, which is how you know what model it's pulling from, because they're very similar. There's a very similar kind of whole thing to them, even if it changes elements. So again, I don't know how I've seen some people doing the music generation stuff. I'm not enough of a musician to know how much it's really doing, but certainly image-wise, it's not good. And forget even the 6-finger joke and all that stuff. It's just not, it can't think. It's not alive. So it cannot do something intuitive. All it can do is try to blend together a certain group of elements based on what you tell it. That's not creation. That's just remixing, and not really great remixing, because it can't figure out what makes something interesting. And since it can't make that judgment, it's inherently limited. And there is that, like you said, that jealousy element. And so when you see somebody who makes something that, let's be honest, is not that great, and you're like, see, computer can do it. It's like, well, yeah, but what is it? It's not much of anything. So you've short-circuited your own creative process and ability to let a machine do it and not do it well. You haven't put anything of yourself in it. A prompt is not you. That's the thing that drives me crazy. People are like, well, I wrote the prompt. Yeah, but you didn't engage with it. You didn't think about it. But then
I don't even want to cut the hairs there. So then did you write the Python code, or did you like write the code? So then technically then you wrote the codes and you wrote the prompt. So then it's you, or like I think that's kind of like boring to split the hairs there. I think for me, as far as one audio software or analysis tool, I'm not really sure it's AI. It's basically the software. It's really fantastic. It's called Fader. That's without an E. So it's like fade and an R.
Of course. Vowels and technology just do not go together.
Right. And it's probably a copyright thing, right? It basically will analyze a song and separate it into multi-track stems. So by that, I mean, it'll take a song that's just a stereo file. So there's like drums, bass, vocals, and it will split it into individual tracks. So it'll just be the voice, or it'll just be the guitars, or just the drums on an individual track. And for anybody doing production, like, that's huge, because then you can kind of, independently edit, or you could just like literally steal the bass line. Like, you could take the bass line, like, what's the bass line to Thriller? Like, what is it? There's like bad things you could do. Just like you said, you could use the tool for good or evil, illegal or non. It could just be somebody interested in learning what the bass line is and wanting to transcribe it. So they like need to hear it isolated. But going back to your other point, it doesn't sound good. So it isolates it, but the sound quality is not great. And I'm not sure that's even really AI, because what it's just doing, it's using analysis tools to decipher or discern what is the vocal range, what's the bass range, and then it's separating it. And it's pretty good at separating it. It's just the sound quality. It sounds like a really bad MP3, or like if you're on 240 on YouTube because you're watching like some Vine or something from like the 2000s, like when the internet first got rocking and rolling. So the quality is not there. But my whole thing about that is it will be. Like, it will be. Like, eventually. Like, it'll get better. So right now I think it's scary, because you're like, eventually when this gets really good, then there's going to be a lot of other sort of ethical questions about it.
Well, and I don't know that I believe it's ever going to actually get that good. I think...
Well, that could be true. True. I assume, it's just the technology will advance and it'll get better. But
it will.
Maybe you're right. Maybe
there will be a point where that program will recreate that bass line in a way that would sound like somebody's playing it. Like that part, yes, that's always going to improve. The algorithms and
or as good as the original.
Yes.
As good as the original recording.
Right. Yeah. But it's still going to be that bass line. And let's say you have 20 people. 20 people use the program on the same song because it's very popular, which is, let's be honest, what a lot of these people are doing. They're going after the popular stuff because they're trying to.
Oh, this is free, by the way. Fader is free.
Sure.
If you want to split it into 4 tracks, it's free. You can buy it as a plugin and you can get the full version, but for free, you can go on the internet and split a song into vocals, drums, bass, and guitar.
So for more than 4, you have to pay, I assume. That's kind of the freemium model.
Right.
Yeah.
But free is, I keep saying free because it's like, this is not something, only the, people who are paying, getting an Adobe license, you know what I mean? Is like, there's an access point to that, right?
Sure.
This is for free on the internet.
Yeah. So at some point that will be something where you could pull those elements out completely and they'll be high quality and you can recreate them. Mm-hmm. But like I said, if you have 20 people that do that, my suspicion is those 20 tracks gonna sound awfully similar. The same way that you can kind of identify generative AI images because they all kind of have the same HDR color vibrance. They all kind of have the same smoothness. And that's not going to ever get any better, because to get beyond that, there has to be what I would almost call the human defect. There has to be this thing where, for some reason, when those other 1,000 people look at something and see an apple, you see the orange. That's what gets somebody to do something a little bit different or varying off the path just enough. And a machine is simply never going to be able to do that. So the fidelity will become 1-to-1, absolutely. But the creativity will never be that, because it will never be a person. And I've heard people say, well, what if they make a brain that acts like a person? Doesn't matter. It's still not a person. Yeah. Oh, well, they could just recreate the organics and everything. Well, then it's a person. So it's not a machine anymore. You've now created data, like you've made a person. So again, it's not a machine. Yeah. So that's where, again, there is going to be some disruption.
Translation, you're talking about the translation. And I just said, I often take ideas from people with all intentions of doing the same thing they did. And just because of my own biases, deficiencies, exceptionalness, I interpret and translate it in a way that sometimes doesn't even resemble the original. So I think in 2040, if you're basically just saying like, hey, computer, make a sick ass song for me, and it does, and then you just post that on Spotify, well, that's going to be pretty bad. But I don't think that's how people are going to use it. And I don't even think that's how people use it now. I think they say, give me something. And they're like, all right, well, this is a start, but let me do this, and let me change this, and let me add this. And then it's got that, like you said, still has that AI kind of sheen to it. So let me go and use this and that. And then at that point, it's really not the computer anymore. It becomes then just a tool, just like you're using, the blur tool in Adobe or something like that, or, one of the edge tools or something like that. Like, it really is just a tool that you then are, manipulating. But as far as like creating content, or like a better way is like clay, like the clay that you can mold. I think that's something that, as it gets better at making things that are like higher fidelity, both visually and auditorily, I think that clay that you'll get will be a lot easier to mold.
And like I said, I have no fear. I think that's good, because there are people, if somebody takes something and learns from it, well, we all do that. So that's why, on the other hand, the people are like, you have to destroy it all. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't have to destroy it all, because not everybody starts out with the same level of talent. And everybody, to some degree, borrows from somebody else. Now, some people borrow a little bit and they pervert it, and I mean that in a good way, into a rapid transformation. And other people have to go slowly, and they have to learn in stages. So I think in that way, I'm all for giving creative people as many tools as they need, as cheaply as possible, so that they can make stuff, because it's not like it's easy to make a living being creative when the tools aren't free. So take as much as you need. And then the only thing I worry about, and I think there are people who do this, is and this is to anybody who might think this, don't let the machine do all of the heavy lifting for you. You should at some point want to warp things and change things, and not just put in a prompt in the end. Like you said, just take that and put it somewhere. Don't have it draw the thing for you and then just post it, because even if nobody sues you or anything else, or there's no cost to it, you haven't put yourself into it. One of the things that's so powerful about creativity is the ability to personally express yourself in whatever way you can. That's why I say this a lot when I do my streams now. I'm like, create something. Who cares if anybody sees it or if it's good or bad, whatever that even means. But it's something of you. There's something there that you can get out there. And if you're letting the computer or whatever tool do it all for you, then I don't really know why you're doing it. What are you getting from that at that point? Except for, I guess, writing a nice prompt. But is that really fulfilling? It doesn't feel like it would be.
Yeah. I think the only thing that the only part of it that I worry about AI, I really just think it's a great tool, and like we're gonna learn the best way to use it. I think some people are gonna use it in a stupid way, just like everything else, like MIDI. Like, I mean, there's tubular bells, there's like fantastic electronic pieces, and then there's just, you know, run of the mill So for every synth that's out there, I mean, even Casio keyboards have like the cheesy rhythm section, right? That you should not use in a song. But sure enough, there's the famous Gorillaz song that just uses like the rhythm section of one of the Casio keyboards, like, and it's like the whole thing of the song. And so like there'll always be these like you know, like people using it for good and bad. My thing is, if AI, a lot of the conversation I've been hearing, and this gets back directly to the process, the creative process is like kind of a marathon. It's grueling. It can be like we were just talking about, like you're like, where am I going? How do I get inspired? How do I stay inspired? How do I not get burnt out? Where do I draw my inspiration from? I mean, I'm sure you've been drawing something, you know, even on your iPad, and just being like, what the hell's the point? Like, why the hell do I need to be doing this?
Yeah.
And that happens to me, like, you know, 5 times a day. So this idea that like AI is going to solve how difficult it is to create something, that's the part where I'm just like, that's it's never gonna do that. Or and I hope it doesn't, because that's why it's worth doing, is because, like you said, you have to like put part of yourself into it. And honestly, even like the shittiest punk song that you're just like, what, like, where was this recorded? It sounds horrible. You hear the angst in the singer, and you hear a bit of them in it, and that's what you connect to, you know? So yeah, that's the part of AI that's what worries me about it, is that people are trying to be like, let's take this thing that is this, you know, very special thing. Like, I mean, like creating a human being, like 2 people creating a human being, like that's like a real special thing. And it has to have like a certain scenario and, you know, whatever, candlelight or whatever. But, you know, there's like, it has to be, it's a very special thing. And this idea that like AI is going to take the sort of qualitative part of that away, and it's going to become this very quantitative, like you do X, Y, and Z and you create great art, and then we can sell that art and it'll sell for X amount because it took this long to make. Like, you know how like you're making toothbrushes, right? Like it's not going to do that. And I think it frustrates people who are in the marketing and the selling of creative content, because I think there's so many variables to the creative process that it makes them uncomfortable, and they invest so much money into stuff, and sometimes it's a bad idea. And you know, like David Lynch, even there's classic videos of him just yelling at people. He started yelling at this person because they were like, the scene runs a little long. We need to tighten it up. And he's like, why does it matter how long the scene is? Why are you so obsessed with how long it is? Like, you know, he's just going off or whatever. You could tell it was a long day. But like, that's what I mean. I'm like, I don't like it when AI starts to create that conversation where we're going to somehow capture magic in a bottle and mass produce it.
Yeah, there is a danger of cheapening in the public kind of mindset what creativity is. That is the one thing that I think we've already seen is a negative, is where people, like you said, oh, just make it on a computer. Why pay somebody? And that makes it, you've now reduced that person down to the final output. You haven't taken into account what they've put into it and what their kind of interpretation of it is, and where these things came from. And so if you flood the zone with all this cheap AI stuff, and it is cheap, I mean, it's not generally actually good. It can work. It can be, as you said, for summarizing, because that's one thing that a lot of people do. You summarize a meeting. Okay, great. That there was no value in that for a person anyway. Nobody's going to come to that and say, well, I went to school for 20 years to be able to summarize a meeting, so let me show you how I can do it. Right? Not very typical. So a machine doing that? Yeah, of course. Why waste the time? But if it gets to, well, we don't really need to have people make movies and we don't need actors, we can just have the machines make people and we can just write the script and then feed it into it, then you don't understand what movies are. You don't understand acting.
But why? But like, why?
Well, there's
like who does that benefit? It doesn't benefit the audience. It doesn't benefit the actors and the creative people that like basically stay alive because they like make movies. Like think about it. If Spielberg didn't have movies to make, what would he do? Like,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So for like some people, like especially for me, like creating is part of like a reason to get up, in the morning. So like if it was just like, oh well, now that's going to be replaced by just a computer doing it. I don't know, why take that away? Why like have your computer like get rid of me having to go grocery shopping? Like, you know what I mean? Like the computer would just know what I like, what I want, go and buy it, bring it back. We're in business. Like I don't need to be grocery shopping in 2040. I don't need to go to the grocery store, right? But as far as making art and music and connecting with other people on an abstract level, because I'm doing it through art, like why would I want a computer to do that for me?
Yeah, the computer should be the facility. It shouldn't be the actual creator.
Yeah. Well, we're using Zoom. So we're using Zoom, we're using technology, we're using the computer to connect to each other and have this conversation. Absolutely. Thank you, computer.
And the transcript it'll make. I don't want to transcribe this thing. So it'll create a transcription, right? It won't know what to make of it.
Maybe it should never be transcribed, too. Like that.
Yeah, the computer just comes back and says, no, never mind. When I ask for transcript, you'd rather not have it. It just comes back with the nonsense.
You're like, you're not going to. It does some interpretation. And but think about it. Would we want to have a third guest on this show, which is an AI companion who basically refutes our arguments? Like, would we want to have an argument with a computer? Not that we're having an argument, but would we want to have a discussion with a computer? Maybe, but like, why? In
most cases, no. The only time that becomes interesting is if the machine you're talking to is capable of independent thought, which I don't doubt that will happen. I don't think it's going to be what most people think it is. I don't think it's going to be Skynet. I don't think it's going to be data. I think it's going to be something very different. But that would be if I believe that the other person I was talking to was having independent thought and was expressing ideas. Yes, I don't care who that other whatever. That doesn't matter to me. But we know that's not what it is. What it's doing is it's looking at a database and it's collating an answer, but that answer can only exist on a finite number of sources because it can't think. So this is the base level is you're not dealing with an intelligence. That is the worst part of the AI thing is artificial. No, it is not. They shouldn't be saying that. I've said that for I gave up on that hill to die on. But it's not intelligent. Yeah. So as a tool, I mean, again, Photoshop, on Procreate, when I make a circle, I don't have to worry about making a perfect circle because I just hold the pen for a minute and it makes the circle perfect. Great! Because I would sit there and do this 80 times. And is that really giving me any value? Or is it that I want to get the circle in there so I can go to the next thing? That's the value of it. Not to come up with the idea of the circle in the first place. I did that. But it's getting me to that end goal faster. And that's great. That means I can create more stuff.
Yeah. So I think for me, like when we're talking about the creative process, like, it is a whole situation, and it is this thing that parts of it I really enjoy, other parts of it I really, I struggle with. But it's this worthwhile thing to do. And, I'm even thinking about, like, I just made the comment about like grocery shopping, like maybe AI can go for me, but part of my creative process is like taking a break and stepping away from it. So I guess if I didn't have to do anything else besides write music, then that might not be good for the whole creative process. And it takes time. I see people like, especially like composers who are writing these like really serious, like long compositions, it'll take them a year to write one piece. And in 2024, to spend a year on anything that maybe has a questionable amount of financial return on it, or an unknown ability to have it a return on that time investment, that seems really bizarre. It's different. It was like the 1500s and you're like, I'm going to write my grand opus or something like that. And you're like, whoa, cool. There's nothing else to do besides that, or like die of like, the plague. So like, yeah. So like, cool. That's a great way to spend your time. So yeah, I just, I rail against like this idea that they're like trying to sneak into like, can we take this process that we don't understand, that is special, that is not quantifiable, can we lock it into this thing so that we can so that's not a variable in our business model anymore. And I'm like, man, if you're going to be a person in, the creative industries, if you're going to be somebody who's a promoter or a CEO or an owner, you just have to understand that the creative process will be a variable, and sometimes it comes quick, sometimes it goes slow. But if you want something good, you have to let the creator work at their own pace.
Well, there's two problems with that mentality. One is, if you streamline the creative process, let's say you could somehow do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. As the creator, you'd be bored very quickly, because if you can just stamp out every single thing perfectly, or whatever you consider perfectly to be, there's nothing to it. It's I don't know if I made this comparison in one of my shows now, but it's like eating a donut, the same donut every day for a year. You're going to hate that donut after a while, no matter how great it is, because you haven't done anything else. If you can just think of something and type it in and it spits that thing out, you're not going to want to do it after a little while, and it won't be that long. And the other thing is, it completely annihilates the value of mistakes, the value of error, of making a mistake, which most times you go crap and you fix it. But every 50, 100th time you go, well, I didn't mean to do that, but I'm interested in what it's now doing. Maybe I should see what going this route does. If a machine is doing it, or even just, doing it a certain way at the same time every time, there is no value in that, because that's that thing where there's an intangible in creativity, where mistakes can actually become the best thing you've done. And you would never have meant to do it that way, but then once you do it a certain way, intentionally or not, it may be valuable, not necessarily in every single thing you do, but you might go, okay, I'll remember that mistake, if I'm doing something different, might work. I'm sure you've run into that, where you've done something and it sounded terrible, and you're like, well, just terrible for this, but that's an interesting sound.
And it's translation. Just like we were saying, you get inspired. Like, think about it. Anything you and I have created, we've translated from something else, right? Like, we've watched too many science fiction movies. We've heard too many sci-fi soundtracks. You know what I mean? So, like, for me, every time I make music, I know it's like all these bad 90s movies that I saw, that's all seeping in, all the soundtracks for those. So really, if you think about it, if you're creating, in 2024, or just in any time period, you're just translating the sounds and experiences you've had. So this idea that even this idea that the ideas that we have are these like really beautiful things that only people could come up with, it's like we're just kind of copying or making better versions of the things before us. So that kind of demystifies the process. But I think the part that's still the intangible is how we know, like, on a day where we make 15 mistakes, why on that day does the 15th mistake really strike our ear and we say, hey, wait, let me file that away. Let me put that in another folder, because I bet if I use this with that might be a cool thing. It doesn't work, like you said, it doesn't work for this, but it might work for something else. And so, and that's all the trial and error. That's the, you're just like, at the end of the day, you're like, I just wasted 4 hours. I haven't done anything. And then sure enough, that mistake you made, at hour, 3, you use that in another piece and it becomes this really popular thing, or this thing you play out a lot, or things, that people really like that you did, or you get a lot of good feedback about it. So, I don't know, of all the things we could automate, why take the process, why take the things that are most enjoyable, like swimming, like swimming, eating, like even grocery shopping. I keep bringing it up, but I actually like to go to the store and pick out food and get the fresh ingredients. Like, that's a whole thing, right? That's almost as fun as eating it sometimes. Sure. So, and preparing it. So who says, some of these mundane tasks that we have to do that computers could do for us, who says it's better for the computers to do it and not something that is important for us to be doing on a day-to-day basis?
Well, getting away from the computerized stuff, and let's get back into the analog, actual creative process. So when you get the idea, now I remember when we were in school. I remember you sitting at the keyboard and kind of,
yeah.
I think you were writing stuff down and kind of playing with headphones on. I seem to remember.
Yeah.
Is it still the same thing? Is it still the same basic idea? Nothing changed after all this time?
That's the thing. So you're saying let's get away from the digital
you're on a keyboard. Right. Yeah.
So I get inspired and I go right to the computer. And so that might not be like back then, you know, in college I was using notation software. So I was spending many hours in the MIDI lab, like writing notes into Finale. Actually, Finale just, I don't know if you heard, it's like no longer a software anymore. They're like getting rid of it. But there'll be another one. Like, you know, I'll just use something else. Right. Yeah. So, but I do less of that. I do less of notation software, like writing actual notes. I'm working more in a DAW or on a synthesizer or in some type of sort of computer instrument. And I'm sculpting sounds. I'm, you know, working with sounds. Sometimes, honestly, I tell you, I'm inspired by an idea. I go and get the recording of that idea and I start manipulating that. So even in that, you could say, Doug, like, you're worse than AI, you know, because I'm like, you know, I'm literally, you know, copyright infringing things. But if anything, I'm taking the original sound, the sound sources, I'm reinterpreting them, I'm reshaping them. So for me, it's always been the computer. And, you know, we just said like AI is not like a valid way of expression. There's a lot of people, even in the creative industry, that say if you have to use a computer to create music, if you're not like writing on a page, I don't hear that as much anymore. But, you know, even 10 years ago, like, oh, you rely on a computer to do this, you should be able to play an instrument and do this and that. So, but I think for a lot of young people too, you know, they have these like really cheap softwares, or sometimes they're free, like Audacity or Reaper, and they just go in there and they get some instruments, some software instruments going and start creating some sounds, and you can do quite a bit. And that's literally all I'm doing. I mean, I'm doing it with years of composition training and being a musician and being a producer and an engineer. So that's all coming into play. But at the end of the day, I'm, you know, dicking around on the computer, just like some 18-year-old kid, you know, in his bedroom. But that's where it starts for me. It starts on the computer and manipulating sometimes the original sound source, or, you know, kind of recording or creating my own stuff.
I've actually had that same thing where I sit there and go, oh man, I'm doing everything digitally. Jeez, I this is not what I went to school for. I should be doing this with pen and ink. I should be doing it with a pencil. This is not art. And I'll even now, because I mean 95% of what I do is all on the iPad, because
absolutely,
if I screw something up on the iPad, it's very easy to fix it. If I screw it up on paper, it's done. I mean, it's like doing a live recording and playing an hour-long piece, and you screw up on minute 58. Well, okay, you did all that, and now you either have to record that one little snippet, but if you're like, no, it's meant to be one piece, well, then you just blew it. Whereas digitally, you could fix it. So, so most of it is on the computer.
Do you do anything though? Do you do anything analog though?
Oh,
like, do you ever do like a sketch?
No,
because I do.
Yeah, I do. No, I do. I actually have. You can't see it; it's behind on the drawing board. But I'm actually doing. It's been, but it has been, I want to say 6 or 7 years since I've done a big physical traditional media piece, because again, you make one mistake, and if it's laid in there, you've lost all those hours of work. That's the biggest advantage to digital for me, is that if I make a critical error, it's very simple to fix it. I mean, literally, I will often, if I'm working on something, I get to a point, I'm like, okay, duplicate the whole thing. Leave the old one as the first version. And that way, if I realize 2 hours into it, oh man, I completely reversed what I was trying to do here. I didn't do it right. Now I could sit there and go like this for 20 minutes to reverse all the changes, or I can just go back to V1 and say, okay, I'll just keep going from here. I realize what I did wrong. I've done that more than a few times. And again, you couldn't do that on physical paper. You'd be restarting forever. You at some point, I would say, screw it. I'm not doing this. I'm just not doing it. It's not worth the time.
And that's a type of automation. It's not AI, but it's a type of automation that you've put into your process, which I use as well. And it would just seem silly to not utilize that, right? But I still, for some ideas, I draw it on a piece of paper. You know, like if it's a basic sketch, but I'm not going to use that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to use that in anything final. But, you know, if I'm just drawing out the form or something like that of a piece, like how I want it to go over time. But Yeah, it's all on the computer. Do you ever find yourself though being like, right now I'm arguing with the computer instead of creating something? Like I'm just like wrestling with technology right now instead of like being creative.
Yeah.
I mean, we did that a little bit earlier, I think.
I mean, mostly, and honestly, when I'm doing that, it is generally because I can't. Well, I've talked about the gulf between what's in your head and getting it out, and that's really what it is. So, this is one area where in digital, I'm not as good as I am in physical. I can do really good rounded lines. I can draw an arc really smoothly by hand. On the computer, though, there's almost always like little jitters to it. And I don't know if it's because I'm missing the surface tension of the paper, like that grip.
Like the resistance.
Something. So that's where I've done it. I've sat there and go, nope. And like 8 or 9 times or more where I've just been like, no, this just, I've done it where I've made all these little lines for a good 20 minutes and then realized they were like curved wrong, or they had little blobs on the end because it's just something about how my hand moves. That would never happen with a pen. It's never happened with a pen. The pen just has the smooth lines. So yeah, in that way, I've sat there and gone, why is it that you can't do what I'm trying to make you do? And ultimately, look, it's not actually fighting me. It's because there's something different. And even having used an iPad now for at least 10 years or whatever it's been, there's still these blind spots that I know, okay, when I go into this, I'm probably going to have to do this 5 or 6 times. It's just not going to be right the first time because I can't undo whatever's in my head that makes me not move the pen that way. So yeah, you have the same thing, I'm assuming, where you're trying to manipulate something, it's just not going where you want it.
But even the pen is technology, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like the pencil and paper is technology. So it's like, so either way, I've got to use something, right? I can't just like write stuff in blood or whatever. I have to use something. Right?
There are artists who have done it. Yeah, and they're probably making more money than both of us, which is its own commentary on, I guess, society. But
right, yeah. It's selling in a gallery somewhere, but yeah, no, like even just knowing how you can push the pen on that curve, and the pen will slow down when you get to the end, so it won't put like excess ink there. Like, so really, I mean, at the end of the day, we're just always manipulating technology. But the way I look at it is, it's like your instrument, right? So just like somebody would practice for years and years on how to play the clarinet without having it sound, squawky and not legato and smooth. We're using these technologies, whether it be an iPad pen or, how to draw automation lines in, a DAW or something like that to create a really nice swell of sound. So I mean, I think it's learning your instrument. And, I've been a big proponent that the computer is an instrument. And for some people, they're like, oh, of course. And other times you say that and they're like, please leave. They're like, get out of here. And I'm like, no, it's an instrument. It is. I mean, it's also a place where you can check your email, but it's also, the software that's in it are instruments.
Well, and I feel like when people respond that way, and there are people like that with visual art too, where they say, well, if you can't draw it with a pencil, if you can't do a study of a figure, then you don't really understand what art is. You have to be able to look at something and like recreate a still life type of thing. And I think a lot of that is because there is, and this is somewhat related to the AI thing, where they view the computer as a shortcut. And a lot of that is, well, it can be. Certainly you can use it as a way to shortcut your way to something, but you can also use it as an extension. And the other thing is, I've done more art since I got the iPad than I would ever have been physically capable of doing, because I don't have the room for 8 drawing desks. Right now on an iPad, I can bounce from an illustration. I can do something for 30 minutes and be like, okay, I don't want to look at this for 30 minutes because I don't know whether I like this or not. And I just jump to another thing, work on that. And then I come back. Now that I've worked on something completely different, it gives me, it's like refreshing your palate, with wine drinking or whatever. I could do that.
And
with
it's not the
paper.
amount. It's not the amount. It's not like I did 100 illustrations this month. It's that I had 100 opportunities to try out an idea, practice it, get better with the tools, get an idea of like how this might actually work, whether on the iPad or in the corporeal world. So it's like practice,
Yeah.
right? So it's not about like this month I cleared, this many compositions, or like I wrote this piece in 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, but like that's not the point. It's not about how quickly or how many you did. It's about either the outcome of the thing you did or what you learned from it if the outcome was not what you wanted.
Well, and also the same thing is just like a storage medium as well. The other thing is I have,
Sure.
I would say probably 40 different canvases on the iPad right now. Again, to try to maintain that would be impossible in the physical world. You couldn't possibly have, if you had to record on tape and you had to have a microphone for every instrument, you'd have to buy a house. You'd have to have a whole house full of equipment.
And the cost too. It's like 30 minutes for around $500 per tape. Like, like it just financially, you'd be like, we can't make any music this month because we're out of tape. We can't afford tape. We can't afford
Or
media.
if the equipment fails, you're now done. That's it. That's another thing. The Apple Pencil is never going to run out of ink. I don't have to worry about the tip breaking. All that stuff.
I mean, they'll
works.
update the OS. They'll update the OS, and everything won't work anymore. But
I'm not saying that it's the perfect engine. No, there's no perfect creation tool. I mean, if anything, you should be glad there isn't. That's kind of what we're saying. Is a perfect creation tool doesn't exist. It shouldn't exist because some of creativity has to be the flaws. The flaws of the people.
That's really the point.
Humanity.
That's really the point.
Yeah.
That's really the point. Like you just said, it's like there shouldn't be like this AI will be this perfect creation tool. Like that's not something we should have.
Right.
Because it's the old classic, the robot, right? They're like, we made this robot that can scream for 24 hours on end. And like one of the other scientists is like, but why? Like, why do we want this?
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I don't think we want a perfect creation tool because that would probably take a lot of the experience out of it.
Now, on the other end of it, where is the point where, because certainly this is I think a basic in almost every creative medium is, okay, you have to get to a point where no piece of art is ever finished. It's just where you stop. How do you find the stopping line? Because I'll be honest, for me, it's actually very easy. Because I am mostly a cartoonist illustrator, so I have this perception of very clean lines. Once all the lines and everything are filled in, I'm like, it's pretty much done. It's
once the box is filled, it's done.
Yeah, it is literally visually apparent to me when something is done. That's not to say I might come back and go, oh yeah, you know what? Okay, I'm going to put this over here. I should have put horns on this creature should have been there. But most of it, I've got it pretty much visually locked in once the sketch is done in the beginning. I know that's the boundaries. And so that's pretty easy for me, but I know a lot of people who they can't figure out when to stop, or that the stopping point is very tough to pin down. I imagine with music it's like that because, again, I can't draw forever. There's going to be a point where it's suddenly off the canvas, but with music you can make a 4-hour symphony if you want. You could just keep going.
Yeah, and the thing is though too, I think just like you said, I think many people make a very specific sketch of what they want to do musically. So when that sketch is recreated, when all the lines are drawn and the box is there, then it's done. And for people that maybe don't write experimental music, like 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, like that's about as long as a song usually is. Like I know there's some longer songs, there's 5-minute songs in popular commercial music, and there's 1.5 minute songs, but you kind of know when it's done because it did like a verse chorus, solo, bridge, whatever, and then went back to a chorus. So, so for that type of music, it's pretty easy. For me, deadlines are important. So I usually only like to do projects where it's going in something or it's going to be finished. It's really hard for me. I start ideas all the time because I'm constantly just creating ideas for the fun of it. But if I'm really going to sit down and spend that absorbent amount of time on something, I need there to be a deadline so that I can say, well, you know what? Too bad, man. You don't think you're done? Well, it's due tomorrow. So at tomorrow when this needs to be in, it's done. And, I have albums, I have music that I've released where I feel good about it. I'm confident and I think people are going to enjoy it. But I've gone back and reworked it later. And sometimes that happens in the live realm when I'm performing. I'm like, oh, well, wouldn't it be cool if I added drums on this or did, so I'm constantly like redoing old material. But yeah, deadlines for me are so important because they just, then it's done when it's due. And that doesn't mean I like wait till the last minute, do nothing, and then like spend, cram for 2 hours. I'm like working a little bit every day, but I think the deadlines are really important.
So you set those even for your own stuff that's not for anything specific. Is that your kind of framework, to say, all right, this is going to be 6 minutes long or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because and usually,
so that's
like,
your sketch,
usually it's
completed sketches. I'm filling this in. All right, if I hit 6 minutes, I have to now start tying this up. Like, this has to end relatively here.
And practically, so like somebody in my stage of my career, I'm either writing stuff for some other media, so it's going to have a specific time, right? And expectation, or I'm writing it for a performance where, like, if I was like 80 and like a world-renowned composer, I could get away with writing an hour's worth of music or an evening's worth of music. At my stage of the game, it's like I'm probably going to get 6 to 10 minutes on a program of other people's music or something like that. Or realistically, is a radio station or a playlist going to put my hour-long song in their playlist? Probably not. So I do, just like you have the boxes, I mean, I do, there are conventions, there are kind of like built-in deadlines, even if you're doing really experimental stuff. My first album, Betty and the Sensory World, was like 60 minutes long. The album was 60 minutes long. And one of the things I went back and did is made shorter tracks within the song that sort of delineated it, not only for streaming, but, on the CD or whatever. And so when that gets played, it gets played on like the Drone Zone and things like that. It's like, after 7 minutes, it stops. And because I went and I had to kind of cut it up just to even, have somebody play it or be played on a playlist or on a internet radio or something like that. So deadlines are important. Do you find yourself, are you a perfectionist? Because this is what I wanted to ask you. I think deadlines for me are really important, because I can always find a reason to say, you know what, it's not done and I need to rework this. And you know what, I'm going to start all over from the start. I'm just going to rework the whole thing because it's not any good. I find myself doing that. Are you in that camp of being a perfectionist?
Yes and no. It's more segmented than the entire piece. There are things where I know, okay, so for example, let's say I'm having a figure in the foreground and then some background element. I've many times had it where the background element, I have to get exactly right. So that will get reworked. There was just one where I was just doing wavy lines. And every time I did them, I would stop. I'd look at it and I said, no, it's wrong. And I must have redid just those lines a dozen times. And I'm talking about multiple, going every single one, because I don't like repeating, even though there's nothing really bad with that. But I didn't want to just copy and paste my own lines. I wanted every line to be different, which is just this.
Yeah.
But with the figure in the front, I was like, okay, I did something and the hand was a little bit off. And I'm like, that's okay. Well, it's still a hand. You can see it's a hand. That's fine. But the background element, no, I got stuck on that because, and I don't know why. It's not like it was the most important element. You could argue it's background. It really doesn't make that much difference for this particular piece. But it never looked right. And I finally got to a point where I did have to finally stop and say, it's close enough. I can't just keep redoing this because I think it's somewhere in my brain it went, it's never going to look like you see it in your mind. It's just never going to be that. So you get it as close as you can without hating it, and then do one more iteration. That's usually my thing is, okay, I don't hate this. All right, do it one more time. And I usually keep the old one, do one more, and then I turn this layer on, look at it. I'll do something else for 20 minutes, come back, turn the other layer on and go, all right. And then I'll, in my head, I do this a lot. I actually think this is a great thing for me. And I'll go, this is the one I like. And then I'll go to my wife and I'll say, which one of these two do you like? And most of the time, the one that I like is the one that she likes, who's never seen this before I showed it to her. And I'm like, okay, that tells me my instincts were right. That was probably the right one. So it's not really a clear answer, but yes and no.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been like, this is the greatest thing I've ever written, and this is amazing. I've said everything I wanted to say. Every note, every moment is perfect. I've never said that. I've always just been like, hey man, it's like due tomorrow, or like I'm like, hey, well, it's done. It's time to move. You know what I say a lot of times? A lot of times I give up. And I don't mean like I'm just like, forget it. There was supposed to be trumpet in this song. I don't care. I'm not scrap the trumpet, no trumpet, get rid of it. It's not like giving up that way, but I just basically be like, you know what? I've spent the time that I'm going to spend on this. And I think that's why I find myself going back quite a bit after the fact and contextualizing it or doing it for live performance, because then I can kind of readdress it and say, hey, maybe it would work better this way or that way.
I have had elements that I thought, man, I can't do it any better. Like there was there's an illustration I did of a mushroom.
You're like, that's a good moment. You're like,
oh, it's great. Yeah, I was doing this mushroom, which I don't even like mushrooms, but I just like the shape of whatever I was basing it on. And I started using this taper pen, which I'd never tried before, and it looked really good. Yeah. And I was just like, I'm not going to get it any better. That's good. For me to get that to look like that is good. And I really do like that part. The rest of it is fine. There are weaker and stronger elements, but that I can usually get in most things, where I look at one piece of it and I'm like, that's really good. And I can't really, this is it. I can't imagine it looking better than that. Not meaning it's the best way to do it and that somebody else couldn't do it better. I can't in my head make this look better than what it looks like. If I can get that once in an image, I'm very happy. The rest of it, you try to get as close as you can. At least that's how I look at it. But if I can I try to have one element, and hopefully a critical one, and not just one line off in the background where it's like, I wrote my name, J-O-E, something frontal and important. Yeah. And if I can get one of those right, then I'm really satisfied that at least I got something of it right. I can look at something and not hate. And I can't detect flaws. If I can look at a piece and not detect flaws in every single bit of it, I've done it all right. Sure. That's the thing, is to try to avoid any defects in one piece.
I wonder too if it's the voice. I wonder if it's that voice that just doesn't want me to do anything. You know what I mean? Like that they're all going to laugh at you. It's like the Carrie thing from they're like, don't release anything, because if you don't release anything, then it can't be judged. It won't be evaluated. It won't be hated, because you spend all this time creating something, and like you said earlier, I think it's really true. You put part of yourself up there. You put your part of yourself into it, and it would suck if you present yourself to the world in this piece of art, and they're like, I don't like you, you know. And I think like you get a thicker skin, right? After you've done this, hundreds and hundreds of times, and you've worked for like clients and different people who are just like, scratch this, lose that. And you're like, they're just cutting up your work or pieces of you. You get a thicker skin, but I think that's always in the back of my mind. I'm always kind of like scared shitless that like, this is not going to be good and it's going to be judged. And you'd think that would leave you after getting paid to do something, or after doing, hundreds of projects, you would think that leaves you, but I don't think it does. And so what I try to do, because I work with a lot of students and I work with a lot of artists who are saying like, you know what, let's scrap the whole thing. I don't like any of this. Let's redo it. Let's push the timeline back 6 months so we can re-record everything and redo everything. And I, like when I'm in the producer role, I have to like kind of interpret, saying like, yeah, is this really bad? Like, do we need to redo it all? Or is this just the person having that creator's fear? Which, by the way, I think the best solution to fix the creator's a fear is to just have a deadline and say, well, I'm sorry you don't like it. I'm sorry you want to redo it, but deadline's tomorrow.
Well,
show must go on.
There's a couple of aspects to that. One is, there's two different things, at least for me. I compartmentalize things two different ways. If it's something I'm just working on for myself, I have far more attention to what the reaction will be. If it's something somebody's paying me for, which hasn't happened often, but it has happened, I can separate that and say, well, if they're telling me, okay, cut this entire thing off and redo it, they see something that they want me to do a different way. And as long as they're paying me, and they want it that way, if I can deliver that, that's for them the best version of it I can do. So I really don't care if I think it's the right way, because I've seen plenty of really bad stuff that people have clearly paid for. But to the people who paid for it, they see something in it.
That's what they wanted.
I can't tell them that they're wrong. For them, that's the Picasso. That's the, whatever they wanted it to be. And then on the other side, yes, the stuff you do as personal projects, that's the stuff I would say I'm the most fearful of, because there is nobody directing me. So if everybody hates it, then clearly my thought was completely wrong. But the thing that refutes that, at least in my experience or in my particular case, was I just started putting all the stuff on Behance, the Adobe portfolio site for visual stuff. I've told this story before, I'm sure. I just started dumping stuff on there. Just because, okay, somebody will see it, and if anybody sees it and likes it, there's a value in that. I don't care whether they're paying me or not. They got something out of it. Yeah. And I got the highest paid gig I've ever gotten off because somebody randomly saw it. So even if you think all your stuff is terrible, I'm not saying put out stuff you didn't work very hard on. You should have some type of integrity in your work. Right. I mean, yes. Yeah. But the reality is, it's a world full of a lot of diverse and different and weird and wild people. 100,000 people think your work's shit, but 100 think it's the best thing they've ever seen. Those 100 are the ones that matter. The under 100,000,
your audience.
They might like eating sandwiches that are 2 pieces of moldy bread with shit in the middle. Do you really value that opinion? No.
Or bread and butter and coffee.
Hard roll, man. Coffee. If you're into the hard roll and people say, "Yep, I like a hard roll," then that's your people. Yep. So
came to the right place.
And that's where you were talking about, like using Zoom for all this stuff. I'm still very optimistic about the internet and everything else because it allows people to find all this stuff. You can find Patreon is one of these things that just I'm waiting for it to get ruined because so many people who would never have been able to survive on their creative works can survive because of that. That's why I'm like, when is it going to get ruined? Because they always ruin it. Right. But that didn't exist when we were younger. There was no Patreon. You had to hope that somebody was going to pay for your work, and that was real hit or miss. I think when we first talked, I remember all these people I went to school with who were way better artists than I was in terms of their actual raw talent that couldn't get work doing anything. And they end up doing jobs that are utterly non-creative. I'm sure they get paid well, and that's not nothing. You have to be able to afford medicine in the United States. So it's valuable, but am I sure that there's a part of them that sits there and is crushed by the fact that they can't make any, or don't see that nobody's seeing value in their work? Even though their work has value, that's 2 different things that will conflict in your inside your gut. Is my work has value, yet no one values my work. That is the worst. Just bump the mic. Sorry. That is the worst part of how creativity is viewed. Is it's so it was already devalued before people thought it was so easy, and everybody just thinks it's so easy, and it's like it's not easy. You live and die by each of these creative works. And for people to be like, it's like, when if you have a garage sale and you put $5 on something that cost you $1,000 and somebody's like, will you take $1? And you're like, it's $5. You can't give me $5. That thing's good.
As you're giving it away, you have all the memories of the great times you had with the people in your life with that object, and you're like, I bought it for $1,000, but it's worth $10,000 in my emotional value. But they're like, can I, can I just get that for free? Or
That's creative. That's creative works. Is people wanting to give you 50 cents for something that's worth $1,000, and that's the struggle of it. So.
And I think that's the thing about AI. I think that's what gets people fired up, is that the special part of creating. So it's like, okay, I can't make any money doing this, or I can't make a lot, or it's really competitive and I have to be really cutthroat to kind of get these creative jobs, it's a zero-sum game from other people. I have to form a community and work with other people that will help sustain me. But so I don't really have that sole thing, but I still have the creative process itself. And I'm like, thank goodness. So I still have that, and that's the value. But so then when AI is suggesting that it's going to take that uniqueness or that special process away or make it, then what will I have left? So I don't know. I go back and forth on a lot of this, and I think the way I sort of, sit on this is that I still appreciate the process. And the one thing that I still run into, which is a little weird, and I think it's just because where I'm at in my career, I'll be working on a project where it'll be a passion project for a lot of people. Like maybe the musicians, they're kind of quote unquote doing it for free, or they're doing it because they want to commission something or do something new, and maybe me, I'm writing it for quote unquote free. But then there'll be somebody who's doing the video or doing some component of it, and they need to get paid. And then that always creates this weird dynamic where like no one's no one's taking home a salary on this project, but one person is, and that can create a really weird dynamic. And I think it's just a fact of getting stuff done. Like you just can't have, no one in the process making or benefiting off of it. And as a producer and engineer, a lot of times I'm that guy in the process, and that's really sticky. It can be, and it can get really weird where the band is doing it for the love of the band, and all the people who are up and out doing the artwork, all this other stuff, they're just doing it because they love the band and they want to see the art be successful. And at the end of the day, I'm like, all right, that's X an hour for studio time. So that's tricky, and I think that's unavoidable. But I think that's just like kind of the environment we're in, where a lot of times people are doing it for the joy of doing it, and without really any idea of being compensated for it financially.
Well, and to some degree, you have to be that way, because especially in a creative anything, unless you really grow up sheltered or you're very, very lucky, you very quickly figure out. I mean, when I was 18, when I was in high school, I'm like, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to be a comic book artist. It's that simple. I just need to get an education. Right. I'll have a degree and I'll just start drawing comics. And then I went to one convention and talked to somebody illustrating comics. And they're like, do you understand how many pages a day you have to do? You have to do this many pages to live, not to get rich, to live. Yeah. And he showed me, he's like, this is how much stuff I have to do in a day. And you have to meet this. If you don't meet this minimum, they will not pay you. You will not get any more work. They will look at you and say you're unreliable, and you will never work in it again unless you get very lucky or very good very quickly. And so, and then when I got to Hartford, where we went to school, the head of the illustration program, the first day is like, all right, almost none of you in this classroom are ever going to make money doing artwork. So just get that out of your head right now. It's not going to happen. Just think that way. So you have to be driven by the creative spark inside of you. And if you do that, and if you're lucky, then you will get paid. But you either decide you're doing this because you really want to do it, or don't do it. Don't get into this. It's not like becoming a plumber. There's always going to be a need for a plumber. Somebody's pipes are always going to explode. So if you are a plumber, you will always find work. Or an electrician, or, certain people are always going to find work, because that's fundamentals. Now, don't get me wrong. I think creativity is fundamental, but most people don't. That's what I talk about, where there's that lack of value for what creativity is. And to some degree, it's because people who aren't creative don't understand what's involved. They only either see the end product, or, let's be honest, there are some asshole artists around who will do artwork that is not very, it's a low effort production, we'll say. Or I'm not the biggest fan of Andy Warhol, for example, color coding paint, soup cans, and then saying that's art and selling it for $2 million. And people are like, you took a Campbell's soup can, you made it red. Now, there's debatable value to the art. I'm not saying, you don't have to like Warhol, but there's a popular perception that artists, especially, when you hear about somebody getting $4 million because they made a giant sculpture of a balloon animal of a dog, and you sit there and go, okay, there are people working 2 jobs dying on the street, and that person's getting $3 million for a giant balloon animal. Right. You understand. I get it. I get it. There is, like most things, this gulf that exists where there's a lack of understanding. And it's just like anything else. The bad apples ruin the whole thing. It's like these people where it's like, okay. And that, let's be honest, just to get really, really specific in a tangent, that's because most of the people paying that money are looking at it like stock investments, not because they value the art.
Absolutely.
They want it to be twice as much later. They want to have a room full of stuff so that when their friends come over, they can be like, look what I bought for $10 million. All this artwork. I am art. Yeah. It's like, no. And that's what, like most things, kills it. Is so. Sorry, I went way off.
yeah, no, music becomes a commodity, art becomes an investment. Yeah, they even talk about the music industry, in the 60s and the 70s, it was like all this, there wasn't a lot of money going around, but there was a lot of excitement and a lot of experimentation. And as the, cost of recording and the budgets and the return that, an album could make, more and more business people got involved. And a lot of people talk about that's kind of the beginning of the end, where it just got, this became a really profitable big business. It wasn't just these small sort of cottage industries and studios that were creating music. And I don't know if I agree with all that, but because I think every time period had, like even in the 50s, there was people that were just writing like really crappy pop songs to make a dime.
People tend to romanticize whatever time period they think is the most creative.
Right.
So it's
back when I was, the music was.
I had to walk 20 miles to school. You kids take a bus. You don't know the value of walking. Well, yes, I know the value of walking. I can take a bus and not get killed by a random person who's drunk driving down the street. But thanks.
At 8 in the morning, where did you live?
Hey.
They need a hard roll to soak that up.
Yes, they do.
So. But no, I think that's complicated. And going back to what you were talking about as far as cheaping it, even there's just this whole concept of the sex and cash principle, where even in acting, actors will do an animation movie. And by the way, I have nothing against animation movies. I think some of them are pretty cool, right? But they'll do the cash movie to make yeah, sure, whatever,
I'll play
whatever.
A donkey,
And
$4
by the way,
I'll play a donkey. I'll say whatever you want me to. Sure.
Sometimes you have like British thespians who have been trained in the Stanislas School of Acting are playing a role in the new Beavis and Butthead. Okay, so they're not doing that for the sexiness of it or the love, like we were talking about, like the love of just doing it for creating something art, putting a piece of yourself in it. So maybe they're not doing that in that movie, but just even this idea that actors have to do that in order to get roles in other movies where they might get paid less. But they can win awards or accolades, or even just do a movie that they think is really important to them. I think like Michael Keaton, like think about how many movies he's been in. It was really important for him to star in the movie or be in the movie Searchlight, which was about, some of the sex scandals that had happened. So that was like important for him to be in it. At the same time, Michael Keaton's been in a lot of great movies, right? He was Batman,
Batman, Beetlejuice, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you could look at those roles as, were those sex or cash? I don't know. Like, cause you got to work with Tim Burton, but like at the same time. So sometimes the really great actors and fortunate ones get to do movies where you're like, it's kind of both. Like they got really paid well for it and it was kind of a strange movie, but it was also really, artistic. So even just the fact that exists in not even, in 2024, but even, decades ago, that you'd have to work in all realms just kind of shows that even the people that are trying to participate and do things like passion projects, things they're really excited about, they have to do things to pay the rent as well.
Yeah, a lot of them do the one for them, one for me model, which is, okay, I'll do this romantic comedy that has absolutely nothing to say so that I can then make a movie where I get paid almost nothing, but I think it's important. Yeah, it's a very common thing. And I think that's true in all creative realms. There are writers who ghost write books and they don't put their names on them for somebody and they know it's trash and they don't care because they're getting a 7-figure payday, and that way they can finance their own book, which maybe almost nobody's going to read. So, and some of that is, again, this gulf where there's just not the proper value for creativity. And that does allow people to make inferior products because if they can just stamp them out, then... And obviously, when you start looking at companies and outfits that are more concerned with, okay, how do we maximize the dollars we're getting from this? They don't care whether there's an artistic value to it. They don't care whether the artist spent 5 minutes or 50 hours on it. They just know they can stamp it, package it and sell it. That also diminishes it. So it's not as if AI has suddenly invented this.
Yeah.
This has been a classic problem. It's a larger problem where there's always been a severe underappreciation of what creativity takes. Now, here's a question specifically for you because you're a educator. So you have students. How do you reckon with them in terms of saying, this is the world you're going to go into, being a creative person, and not have them completely lose all hope and be like, well, as you said, why am I doing this? If this is how bad it's going to be, or if I'm going to have to be artistically bankrupt to survive, and I can't really do what I want to do, which for some people, some art is very hard to put out to the public and get them to understand it the way you want them to. That's a natural byproduct of especially experimental anything, really, writing, visuals, all of it.
Sure. Yeah.
So how do you keep them from becoming completely demoralized by the way that the world treats creators?
I don't mention it at all. I don't bring it up, and I don't talk about it. And was there a time in my career, so I've been teaching for about, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 years. No, probably 20 years. Because I started in my 20s. And I've taught all different places. I've taught at Northeastern. I've taught at elite universities. I've also taught like a Pro Tools class in a mall that was right next to a Cinnabon. So I've
Hot dog on a bagel?
Hot dog on a bagel, yeah.
Hard roll and a hot dog.
There was like an Orange Julius right down.
Orange Julius, man. Oh, that brings back memories.
Nothing's better than eating a Cinnabon and then orange juice. That sounds.
That's
great.
actually.
I can feel the
folks,
acid.
that's true. That is the magic combo if you want to be a creator. A giant gluey Cinnabon and then suck down a giant Orange Julius, and you'll be creating for 2 or 3 hours before you hit the bathroom on both ends.
Right, yeah, and it's just the acid reflux. Yeah, it'll be great.
Do it now. I'm too old.
Yeah. So don't stay away from the Orange Julius, everybody. I don't know if they still exist.
Oh, they exist.
Maybe
They're still around.
Oh, they exist. But so anyways, I've always compartmentalized teaching as you're asking me to teach you a skill. And I look at it, so when somebody comes to a class and we're talking about mixing or we're talking about critical listening, I don't feel the need to constantly put it in context of, you absolutely need to do this or you're not going to be successful, or you can't make money doing this. And also in the situation I'm in now, a lot of the students, they're maybe not going to go into like a role playing type situation where they're going to be like something like, Stenacor does, where, he's like a re-recording engineer where he's, re-recording dialogue or doing design. They might not be stepping into that type of role, where instead they might be like running AMC or, you know what I mean? Or overseeing something in Hulu. So it's a very different student. But even when I was dealing with students, like when I taught at the Art Institute, where they were like, we want to learn skills so that we can go out into industry. It's something that I think early on I used to dwell on quite a bit. I used to say, like, you guys need to do this and you need to take this seriously. I gave them the speech that illustrator gave you at, Comic-Con or wherever you were at that conference. Like, you have to be dedicated to do all this stuff. And I don't find myself doing that anymore. I compartmentalize it more where I'm like, I'm teaching you the skills and it's really up to you to use it. And, one thing I do harp on quite a bit is this whole perfection idea, and that you got to put stuff out and you got to do stuff, because if you keep saying, I got to redo it, I got to get it perfect, I got to get it, I can't put it out till my vision is complete, then you're just not going to do anything and you're not going to accomplish anything. So for me as a teacher, I don't bring it up. And I know there are teachers that do it a lot, and that's a very big focus for them. But for me, I'm like, hey, for the 100 minutes or, hour and a half when I'm meeting with these students twice a week, we're focused on the process and the doing. Okay, today we're talking about how to use a compressor on the human voice to make it sound more even. Great. That's what we're locked into. I may bring up like how I've done it with clients, or like how to not, never put reverb on a singer's voice, like in between takes, like, or don't have a singer start singing and then put tons of reverb on their voice, because they might be like, wait, why'd you put all that reverb on there? And it's like, because your voice is amazing, and I just thought putting tons of reverb on it to drown it out
I just want to hear more of it.
would
around
further
the edges.
enhance
I
it.
want to hear more.
Yeah. It's like the smudge tool.
I want to
It's
expand
like the
your
smudge tool,
voice as much as possible to fill the space because of all the quality.
Or you just hear the auto-tune fire up, and it's like, and all of a sudden they're in tune. They're like, wait, what just happened? And you're like, oh, nothing.
I bumped the switch.
Don't pay any attention. Yeah. So so I do bring that in. I bring in the context of doing it professionally or doing it in a way that when you're going to get paid. But, I don't think that's education anymore. Like, the whole idea of like half of you here are not going to be, my sister would talk about engineering classes where like, the 101 engineering class, the lecturer would be like, half of you here, look to your left, look to your right, half of you won't be here at graduation, let alone engineers in the industry. Like, that's just not the mantra and the vibe, for good or for worse. That's not the philosophy that we're weeding people out. And I feel that I'm being paid to help people acquire the skills and the things that they want to learn to be successful. And yeah, you're right. They might not be successful. The deck is stacked against them. But like I said, I don't bring it up. Now, if I'm asked, well, good luck.
Yeah.
If as a student, you come up to me during office hours and say, hey, Doug, is it a good idea to sell the farm and just go out and open my own studio and become a recording engineer? You'll get an earful. But yeah, on a day-to-day in class, I don't bring it up.
Yeah, and I don't know that I think either way is right or wrong. I think you could make an argument for both ways of doing it, because if you tell people, if you're very frank up front about the challenges, you might stop somebody from wasting, in their opinion, a number of years on something they'll never use. But you could also kill somebody's creative drive, that a year from now they stumble into something and they realize they love it, and regardless of whether they'll make money at it, they want to do it. So you really can't win either way. You can argue either approach, I guess, is what I mean to say. Is you can say either way is correct depending on what your perspective is on it.
What if they go on to be a banker? So they take all these music classes, and they're a music major, and they do all this, but they go on to be a banker. And you're like, well, that was a waste. Or I've had students that were pre-med, so they're going on to be doctors, like operating, like saving lives. And part of me is like, well, that was just a waste of everybody's, fucking time. Like, I'm just like, that was a waste of their time to learn all that stuff. And it was a waste of my time, because they're just going to be doctors or whatever, which is cool. It's important. We need doctors.
Stupid doctors.
But I'm like, but then I think to myself too, I'm like, well, what is this doctor going to do when he's not doing these really like extreme surgeries where like he has to be like very adroit and really focused? What is he going to do when he goes home?
Yeah.
And, or what are they going to do when they go home? And, I'm like, well, are they just going to go home and like drink or I don't know, like kick the dog or do compulsive gambling because like FanDuel is everywhere or whatever? Or are they going to sit down in front of their computer and start working on a little beat or like make a piece of music? Are they going to do an illustration and submit that in some type of community or local, art event symposium? Is that how they're going to spend their extra hours of their day doing something creative, doing something constructive? And I'm like, if they're going to do something destructive to themselves and their family, then the fact that they took those music classes, that's a win for everybody. Because they're not going to be out, like you said, at 9 a.m. at the bus stop hitting kids because they have a DUI. Like they're not going to be, instead they're going to be, at home making music or, jamming with friends. Like, there's the band of like 50-year-old dudes just like rocking out. Like every time I see that, I'm just like, oh my God. But then I'm like, you know what? They're out there doing this thing, and yeah, they're playing all cover songs of only Creedence Clearwater, but it's like, they're having fun and they're doing something that's not.
Let them do what they want,
and it's not destructive. Yeah. So I don't know. I think I've become more open-minded to where the educational journey is really like. What does an undergrad education? What is it really going to do for people? And I've almost devalued it in a way where I'm saying, like, you could take all the classes and learn every single thing, and still be horrible at this process. Or you could listen to nothing I have to say and just say, like, I don't agree with anything you have to say, and you could go out and make critically and financially successful art. So I don't know. I don't know what I do there, but
well, no, I mean that.
What would you say you do there?
That is that.
You know what I do?
That's the answer. Is that instead of you avoid it and you focus on empowering them to do whatever they're going to do. I think that's a completely, like I said, I've seen the other approach to that, and it is a 50-50 split to me. I don't think either way is right or wrong. I think it really does depend on, I guess, what your experience is. I mean, obviously, the guy who was telling us that had some bitterness, I'm pretty sure, tucked in his back pocket that he was kind of doling out for everybody else to kind of mire in. But at the same time, I don't think it was a bad idea to let people know, hey, this is the reality. This is, because there can be, I mean, this is certainly also partially my experience. When I was in high school, and I'm not saying this with any type of hubris or anything, I was probably the second or third best artist in that school, which was a small pool of people.
Right.
So when I got out of there, again, I thought, oh yeah, I know what I'm going to do. And then I got to college and I'm like, okay, not so number 2 or 3. And so there is a value in knowing the reality of what you're doing. And especially then going, okay, now I'm going to have to compete against these people potentially, and understanding what that is. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. If anything, I've become more and more of an evangelist of create something. Who cares if anybody sees it or not? You should do it. But at the same time, the reality is there is no predicting what will be a success or not, because what's great about art is what's terrible about art. One person's Mona Lisa is another person's whatever your worst artist that you hate the most is. And the reality is those two people can stand right next to each other looking at the same thing and not see the same thing, listen to the same thing and not hear the same notes, read a piece of writing, trash Hemingway, on both sides. It's the killer of it, really, is that there is no electrical engineering. You have to turn the power off before you stick your hand in it. Like that, you have to know that, but not with art. You don't know.
It's only bad if you're trying to make money off of it, or if you're trying to evaluate it.
Right.
And so if you just stop evaluating, which we won't do. I mean, we do this all the time when we talk about movies. We're like, well, I don't think that scene went very well, or this was a great scene. But if you stop evaluating art and then stop trying to make it this like commodity that you can buy and sell, then none of that makes it really great, actually, because then it becomes in the eye of the beholder if it's of value, right? But we can't. We have to have critics, and we have to make money, and things have to be profitable, and we have to make investments, and we have to be successful. We have to win awards. We have to get accolades for everything that we do. So here we are. Talk about bitter, right?
Well, again, this
maybe that's why I don't bring it up in class. I have like blood pressure problems.
I do. I occasionally
brought it up in class.
I don't know if you ever do this. Where occasionally I'll see these things where it's like, oh, for a couple $1,000s, you can go off into the woods with other artists and have like a week of just creating. And I'm like, man, the problem with that is that's the best week of your life, and then you come back and go, all the bricks come back down. Where it's like, yeah, that was Fantasyville. Welcome to where you have to pay an electrical bill now. Go write a song about that, moron. It's like, oh, great.
Right. It's like, I would never write a 3-minute pop song. I would never do that. And then you're like, oh man, I got this mortgage.
Yeah, until somebody says, well, you can make $7 million if they put it on the radio. Oh, really? 3 minutes, you say, right?
And you're like, oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. No, that is again, this is the essence of why creativity is a struggle. Is because it pulls you in so many different directions. There's so much value in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I encourage everybody to be as creative as they can, because there is something that only you can make what you make. That's it. That's the other side of the machine. Don't be afraid of the machines. They can't make what you make, because only you can make what you can make. As good or as bad as it'll be, it's going to be the best thing you can ever make. So make it. Why not? Go for it.
And isn't that why we enjoy movies? I think, you and I being creative people, we enjoy movies. I think everyone enjoys movies, but I think probably for you and I, we enjoy them in a little bit different way, because when we see something that we think is good, like when we see a movie where we're like, oh man, like some of these Carpenter films where you're like, oh, they didn't quite have the budget, but they still pulled off this scene and it was so cool. And we like see all the maybe limitations and can appreciate all the like, sort of, oh, that had to be a tough shot to do, or how did they pull that off? And they still make something that is this finished thing and is of value to us. I feel like, for me at least, I just appreciate that at such a higher level, because I'm just like, wow, like to finish it, have it be successful, and have it communicate to a larger audience. That's really special.
And that's why now I review a lot of lower budget and lesser known films. And I'm always, I have a tremendous bias to try to get as much positive out of it as possible, even if it's not a really good movie, because there's very few I've seen, and this is generally true, and you usually can recognize it. There's very few of these movies where I feel like they went in trying to make a garbage film. It's not that they wanted
or they didn't care. Like they were just,
there are those movies.
They were making this movie on a shoestring, a shoestring budget to.
They
I think
they did as much as they could with the materials they had, and when I kind of factor that in, I don't just want to say this movie's crap. I want to say, well, here's what worked about the movie. It doesn't all work, but this was. I was just talking about one that was this little Mexican slasher film from the late '80s. That if you looked at it, you would think it was a ripoff film, because that's what it looks like. And I expected that. I thought, okay, this is going to be a ripoff film in a different language. Okay. And it was actually really good. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm going to be gushing about it when I do my full review of it, where I'm like, no, you should see this. But there were so many of those that when you see a couple bad ones, you go, well, they're all that. But now I try to conjure out the good ones, because, anybody can, well, I shouldn't say anybody. There are a lot of $50 million films that look, sound, and contain good acting. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm all that impressed with them when I actually watch them. I sometimes prefer a movie made for $50,000.
What was El Mariachi, right? And so a lot of times these like really independent films, or really indie small films that don't quite have the budget, they showcase somebody that it's Rodriguez's passion, right? Like you're just like, you saw it in there. They're like, oh, they couldn't quite do this, or they couldn't quite do that.
Assault on Precinct 13. I don't remember what you said, because you said the budget for that was minuscule compared to a modern film.
Was like
nothing.
And we have to adjust for like 1970s inflation or whatever.
But even so,
but it was like, wow, how did they even make this? And I mean, the acting, so there's some, priceless parts of it too. And even just the way it dealt with like racism and like such a unpreachy show don't tell way in the 1970s. It's just like, so it's there. It can be found, and that's what I appreciate. I mean, also in that movie's a child gets shot
with so little care.
So there's a little, So, there's all different types of stuff, and some stuff's really subversive and not ready for, prime time. But I think that's the problem. I think we are so driven to evaluate things, not only like financially, how much did they make? Like, because we were even talking about too, like with Carpenter, a lot of this stuff is the budgets were so small and he was making modest returns, but because the budget was so small early on, it was like this was actually a pretty lucrative investment. And even when he did Starman, which was his biggest budget film, I think it was like $25 million, and was Michael Douglas was the executive producer, was financially backing it. That was like his highest budget film, and still, it made a modest return, but he even said he needed to do it to just prove to Hollywood that he could handle a larger budget, so I don't know, there's just so much like, to creating, and once you get into the industry and the creative industries, there's all this other stuff that you have to do that's not about the project, that's just to sort of prove to people that you can handle getting paid to do it,
But that's another argument to doing the stuff and putting it. There's so many platforms that you can use for free now. If you have any creative inspiration, make the stuff you want to make, and see if it finds an audience. Because the other side of that is you don't need those companies and all these big studios and anything anymore. You can connect directly to people. And a lot of the tools, like the stuff that you use, the stuff that I use, there's lots of free or very inexpensive tools. So take advantage of that stuff, because if you never bother, then you're never going. I mean, it is the most trite, repeated possible thing. If you never try, you'll never know if you could have been successful. But it is really true. And there are so few barriers now that you should. Because even if it's only people that you're friends with or that your family sees it, that's not nothing. It's not nothing to have somebody look at your work and say, wow, that's really good. And you should know it's good because you made it. So if anything, hopefully this has been 2 hours plus of saying, do this work, because it isn't going to be easy. And if it is, then, boy, I'd look twice at it. It should never be that easy. I don't like to say anything good has to be hard work. It shouldn't be miserable. Yeah. But
sometimes it comes easy, sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes you toil on some pieces, and other things you make it in 5 minutes, and that's the thing.
Look, if you wake up and you write, Adagio for a G string or whatever that song is called, or Air on a G string. Sorry, not Adagio for a G string.
Every day.
See, that musical theory work is coming right back to me. That single
60% of the time, it works 100% of the time.
Yeah. But so if you could do that, hey, I envy you, and I'm sure those people, there are prodigies in the world, but the rest of the time, there may be effort, but there is also a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I hate prodigies. I hate people that perfect pitch can do all these things, because that's not my experience. My experience is that it's hard work, and it doesn't come naturally, but it feels like the thing that's natural to do. Like, does you know what I mean? It's such a toil, but you're like, oh, I'm a natural at this. I just spent 100 hours fixing this one, bar of music, but this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, I think we've kind of said it all. Yeah, we kind of covered everything I think we wanted to. Hopefully this has been, I would hope this would be somewhat inspirational. I don't generally say that about a lot of the shows I do, but I would hope in this case, maybe, that.
Well, maybe because a lot of the movies we review are pretty dark, right?
Yeah, we haven't done a lot of cheery flicks.
Going just real quick, going back to that guy at the convention that was like, do you know how much work you're going to have to do and all that? I think we're kind of saying the same thing, but we're doing this sort of more positive slant on this, that you're going to have to do a lot of work, but that work, you're going to have to love the work.
But also, to give a bit of a lift to it, a little bit of hope to inject here. When I went and saw that guy, there was no Patreon, there was no Bandcamp, there was no Instagram, there were not these avenues where you had to go to Marvel, you had to go to DC, and you had to pitch against 1,000 other people who only could go to Marvel or DC. Whereas now, this again is an encouragement that, okay, fine, you're not going to sell 1 million CDs. That doesn't mean you can't make money. And more importantly, and I know this is hippy-dippy nonsense, but it's true, or at least I really do believe this, there are people who will get something from your work. And the people who actually value it will pay. There may not be a lot of them, but those people actually care. And again, that's not nothing. So do something.
And it'll start at 5. It'll start at 5 people, and one of those people will be your mom, right? It'll start with 5 people, and then it'll be 10, and then it'll grow from there to 100, and from there.
Yeah. Well, Doug, thank you once again for coming on here and
it was awesome,
spending a couple hours talking about stuff that we love talking about. Music for Billionaires is still the most recent album. DougBielmeier.com.
We've got some new stuff in the works, and there's a SynthFest coming up. There's a couple SynthFest events here on the East Coast, not only in Boston but also right at Northeastern. We're going to have a SynthFest event there, so it'll be a day in November, which will be pretty exciting. So if any of your listeners are in the Boston area, you can find out more information on the website about an awesome day of synth music and performance lectures and awesome gear that you can actually play. There's a synth petting zoo, so you can come and play a synth.
DougBielmeier.com. I mispronounced it, I'm sure, just now, or at least you're not going to spell it off what I said, but that's okay. That's what I have show notes for. There's going to be a link right there, so you'll be able to click there and find all of the information. Thank you, show notes. because I can't pronounce nothing. So it's a good thing I've got him.
Nothing. I can't
pronounce nothing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My New York bleeds out here and there. Once in a while, you're like, oh, got it. Yeah. Well, Doug, this has been great. An absolute blast, as I knew it would be. Absolutely. So thanks for coming on and talking about creativity, one of my favorite subjects. Oh, by the way, listen to Doug's podcast because it's great. I really have just appreciated it more and more the more I've listened to it. I'm not kidding. Sure. That's what made me want to do this show, because I'm like, yeah, that's because I know your shows typically are around 30 to 40 minutes or so. And I'm like, I want to sit here and talk for a couple hours about this stuff. I just want to go on about it. So, which is my one true skill. I can just keep talking forever. So yeah, that's my one talent. Shame that, like most creative things, nobody wants to pay to hear me talk. So in any event, thanks for doing this. Go listen to The Process. Go over to DougBielmeyer.com for more information on the stuff that Doug is doing. Buy Music for Billionaires. Buy one for yourself and 10 for your friends. And on that note, thank you very much for hanging out, and we will talk to you in whatever next thing we do. Bye.